Hey, this is Carl, also known as Zarepath in Custom Magic Community, here to talk about another Custom Magic set, A Tourney at Whiterun. There are 10 sets up for nomination for the new Custom Standard rotation, and I just wanted to do quick videos for my review to look at each of them. A Tourney at Whiterun is, as you can see here, it's about a tournament, but there's betrayal involved in it. That's kind of an interesting theme. Mechanics are fabled, which is basically kicker auras added to your spells. These are spells that have targets, and the aura goes on the target. And then it has Adorned, which is a mechanic I've seen a lot. You get a bonus if something's equipped and or enchanted. Renown, which we've seen lots before. Infiltrate, which is kind of weird. It's a little hard to parse when you read it. Whenever one or more attacking creatures you control aren't blocked, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's not like Frenzy where it gets a bonus if it's not blocked. Instead, it gets a bonus if anything you have isn't blocked. So if you go wide, you get a bonus. Which, I mean, already kind of, I feel like it steps on the toes of Renown, because that's already what Renown wants to do, but Infiltrate wants to do it, and he just wants it to happen at all, whereas Renown, you want it to happen specifically with that creature, and I think that's a little bit of conflict. And then Cripple. You may cast a spell for its cripple cost if an opponent has lost life this turn, which is a spectacle in the new Ravnica set, except this was made way before. So I think it's kind of a neat feather in the cap of Hersey Corsi, who's the person who made this set, that they predicted that mechanic. And I think this is a nice splashy card to have it on. It even has the kicker mode where, if you cast a spell for its spectacle/cripple cost, then, this bonus. So I think that's it's an interesting suite of mechanics. I'll talk about it more as I go through the set. So this is for custom standard. So the things I'm going to be looking at are specifically effects to standard, but I'm going to talk about the set a little bit overall as well, because for custom standard you want very polished sets. I like the theme. I think this, I like the mystery and the story of the two main characters from different nations deciding to marry each other, but they actually have more going on here. Okay, knights. This is interesting because there's a lot of knights from the Hollow set, so that could be an interesting synergy. I'd be interested in a Whiterun / Hollows knight deck, and there's knights in CC18 as well. Deflecting Strike is an interesting effect. I don't know where it sees play in the decks that already exist, but as I go through white especially, you'll notice that there's kind of a pushed constructed theme in this set that might use it. Basically, it can't be countered and you can't lose this turn. Okay, this is a big fabled spell. It's a fog in white, which I don't know how I feel about that. That also can give you creatures each turn. So there's a turbo fog in white in this set that has a lot of support. In fact, I think most of white's main constructed cards support this turbo fog thing. This is, I forget the name of the original WotC card, but that might see play. This is an aggressive card, which is pretty good. I think there's better options right now, but that would be something. I don't think that does much. It's an interesting hate bear, but it's also a bird. It makes things cost more, but I don't know. If you're in a hate bear strategy, you probably don't have lots of high CMC spells to come off the top of your deck. Okay, this is another anti-aggro Turbo Fog card. It blocks really well. When they attack you, you gain life, and you just gain life every turn. I think kind of the conflux of all of these things is a little... I think it's a little too much. One of the things I noticed in this set is there are a lot of designs that hit on the same areas, or just kind of are the same designs copied over and over again in different slots. And while I think those original constructed design ideas are fine. I'd love to see those slots used to push something else, so that there's a little more diversity uh, as far as what a player can choose to do if they're using this set in constructed. Dun, dun. Target player gaining hexproof and the spell not being able to be countered. There's a lot of can't be countered, I noticed, which is a weird thing in white also. I don't think this would necessarily see constructed play, but it's the same kind of theme of white being very defensive and not letting anything bad happen to them. Um, yeah, and here's another fog for the same cost. I mean, it is technically different, but in practice it will just be another fog. I really like Tearful Reunion. I think it's just great resonant design. It really makes you want to come up with some kind of deck you can build around it, even though it costs 7 mana and you need 2 creatures, and then like it being shuffled into your library is a little bit weird, but that is also kind of exciting if you're doing something so grindy. So I really love Tearful Reunion. I think that would be a fun build around in a custard environment. Trapped in the Tower is a neat little situational removal spell that goes along with the white preventing any damage being able to be dealt to them, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't know if that sees play in a knight deck, because a lot of knights have like, they cost white or black, and this doesn't give them that much bonus, and it's not a knight itself, so it doesn't benefit from other synergies. So it's probably more of a limited card. Yeah, here's another. This isn't fog. I would rather keep this and remove the other, the other common fog, because this feels a little bit more white, because it prevents damage from one creature. This feels like an Atropolis card to me, where having a higher life total than the opponent matters a lot. I guess you could say that some of this pushed white stuff would work well with Metropolis, the Metropolis Supremacy things, but I don't know. So those were the white cards. Blue, we start to see the cripple mechanic, which is very interesting to think about. So Ambitious Dreams would definitely see play, in my opinion. You might end up seeing play more in a tempo strategy, which I don't know that Custard needs that support now, but it's an interesting tension where this kind of wants to be a control card because it's instant speed and you're getting a 2-for-1, but it's very difficult for control to activate the cripple cost. That seems to be developed very differently than the way that Spectacle is in Ravnica, but Ravnica, they have to keep it in black-red, so obviously it's going to be different. And I do appreciate that even though they're essentially identical mechanics, they're developed differently so that they're going to feel differently. Obviously that wasn't intentional because cripple happened first, but it is a difference. And I think Custard feeling different than just being exact analogs of things that are already in Magic is good and important. Infiltrate, I think a lot of the Infiltrate creatures seem to be more limited focus, but I might be undervaluing Infiltrate. Draw a card, then each player draws a card. This could be this could see play for sure. It depends. It reminds me of the Anchoret cards that were undercosted powerful effects. You could choose between 2 very powerful staple effects for a cheap cost, so like a counterspell or bounce, or lightning strike, or a ritual. But then the opponent would get a bonus of their choice, and it was always hard to evaluate how good they were. I think this would be similar, but 2 mana card advantage is important. I mentioned earlier about some of the slots kind of copying each other, some designs just kind of being repeated multiple times, and I think one way to improve the set would be to look at some of those slots and maybe use them for different designs. Having both players draw cards is something I saw in a lot of cards, and I think that helps promote the feeling of this fun cooperative tournament, like nations coming together and both players doing similar things, both players' game plans going forward. I think it's probably too much, and that's something I'd look at if I were Hersey-Quersey. Curiosity, there's kind of a Voltron sub-theme to this set, I think, with Fabled, although I don't think many of the Fabled cards are great as Voltron Forest specifically. But Curiosity is something that might see play in Boggles. I've been looking at reasons for Boggles to be in blue, because right now it's just straight green-white, because all pushed Boggles cards are in green-white. It would be interesting to have Boggles enablers in other colors to kind of diversify the deck choices. So you can be like, well, maybe I want to splash blue here, but then maybe there's another Boggles deck that is more core green-white. Dissolve would be something that sees play. There's not super great 3-mana hard removal spells in the format now. This is a really pushed common. Like, I don't think Wizards would print this without Infiltrate, and the fact it also has Infiltrate means this is very strong. I could see this being very constructed playable. I think it would see play in Calibur's turn 2 aggro deck. I don't think that's constructed playable. Flash of Inspiration. This is very interesting. It's a lot like, I think it is just Dig Through Time. Look at the top 7, pick 2, put the rest on the bottom. I really love the design of Dig Through Time. I don't know if I like it so much on Flash of Inspiration. I don't know if 5 mana is the right value for it. This also kind of feels like a rare, not a mythic. However, being able to do the cripple cost for it is really good. The problem is a lot of these cripple designs that I'm seeing in blue are on controlling cards, like things that control wants to do, like drawing cards. But what decks are dealing damage and want to draw cards? I mean, all decks do, but generally strategies don't try and do both at the same time, which has a lot of interesting tension, but I argue it might be too much tension. Another thing I'd look at is it's the same kind of tension in Flash of Inspiration as it was for the draw 2 for 4 mana spell. And I'd probably look at which design is playing most interestingly and keep one and then look for a different effect for the other. Oh yeah, this is one that would definitely see play for sure. I guess, so when I read Infiltrate, it seems overly complicated to me, but I suspect it plays much better. Like, just as long as anything, this one probably might play the best of all of them. Just if anything you have isn't blocked, then everything gets +1/+1. This seems the cleanest way to do it. Very straightforward. I don't know if it then feels blue. I don't know. Then it's like giving everything +1/+1. I could see this as a blue-white card. Kind of a nitpick. Well, I don't need to nitpick the comments. This is a really fun cycle. Each color has a knight of the X or Y that when it deals combat damage to something, you can sacrifice it and find a legendary creature. It does seem a little redundant with Infiltrate and Renown. Like, there's a lot of things that want to deal combat damage and mechanics that want things to go through and deal combat damage. But they don't really enable each other. They just kind of all overlap. But this would be really fun in this cycle. I think would be fun in ECH, which can afford to be a little grindier. And even if you don't have legendary creatures as your generals, there's legendary creatures that have synergies with each other, and you can find them with your knights. I think that's really neat. You have a self wheel. I don't know if this is a reason to splash blue in Boggles, but maybe, because one problem with Boggles now is evasion. Like, it desperately wants the trample auras, which is why I have one in Metropolis that would definitely see play in Boggles. But going to blue gives you Curiosity and can't be blocked, and maybe those are things that would help. This doesn't feel like a rare. This is kind of a weird card. Okay, Control Finisher. We have some of those in Custard, but not like that come down at... I guess this, you don't really play it until turn 8. It's not quite an Aetherling, but it exists. So I don't know if that would make waves. Would it be an option? Prowess and Infiltrate. I don't think the double blue makes that playable. I think that the legend would be the one to see play. This is a really interesting Johnny card. You can bounce their stuff and your own stuff. Um, this I'm really worried about. Like, this will just see play in aggressive decks as a free cantrip, in my opinion. It's kind of exciting, though. But yeah, it's yet another blue cripple card that just draws you cards. I would look for other designs in blue for cripple. This is really interesting with cripple. And then, I guess, if you want to do that blue-based control cripple deck, this is how you do it. You bounce their creatures, and then you get cheap draw spells, so you regain the card advantage you lose by playing your Sunken Ambitions. I worry about this card in Custard, though. Blue is already pretty tempo bent, and this just makes them very strong. But I appreciate that this self-synergizes with the other cripple designs in blue, and kind of addresses my criticism of them all kind of being too control-y, and therefore how do you enable them? This card I think is too strong. It's mind control for 3 mana, or it's draw 3 cards for 3 mana, and even though it's a Punisher effect, there's a time delay on it, so you definitely get the creature for a turn, even if the 3 cards is worth it to them. They still lose a turn of blocking, right? I think Take for Ransom has to at least be 1 blue. Yeah, I could see it as blue, to be honest, if you wanted to push a monocolored thing, but the set doesn't really do that. And this is yet another draw spell with Cripple. I think the cross-color payment makes it a more interesting card. It's a very strong card. Drawing 2 cards and then discarding a card at instant speed, I think, is already quite good at 3 mana. And so being able to lower it is fine. This feels very similar to the control finisher. Like, this doesn't have ways of definitely protecting itself, but it does have hexproof as long as it's untapped. It seems to have a very fun play pattern, though. Like, it makes itself vulnerable when it attacks, but you get to scry too when you do that. And then if they don't kill it, you get to draw a card. So there's like a risk-reward aspect to the card that I really appreciate. I like that design. Voyage's End. That seems redundant with the other one, although I guess the other bounce spell was uncommon. Okay, black. I really like this card. I wanted to make a mono black control deck in the format, and one thing I was looking for are what are the best black 2-drops that can, help win the game if need be, but are really solid against aggro decks or other decks, like something that black can do on turn 2, just to have a little bit of board presence. And I think it reminds me of Aetherborn, whatever it was called, that Death Touch and Lifelink. Except this can also put pressure on other control decks. And also, once it gets big enough, it might become worth paying the life to just get it bigger. I think this has a really fun play pattern, and I like the deck building ramifications because the decks I want to build. I really like Batwing Initiate, so nice design. I was looking for Boggle stuff because of Fabled, right? It seems interesting that Fables, I think it's like in blue, black, and green or something, because this is a creature that is in black that cares about enchantments, and it helps you find them for 2 and a green. It's a little too grindy for Boggles, I think. And here's another control card with cripple cost. Makes a little bit more sense in black. You're more likely to be able to do that, but it's just strange that all the cripple designs I've seen so far are for control decks, but cripple wants you to be aggressive. Yeah, this would see play just as a 5-mana sweep for 4. Well, maybe not, because Final Verdict exists. That's a little odd. I like that design. It's not for Custard, but I appreciate the aesthetics of it. This is kind of a fun thing. Probably doesn't see play, but maybe. Duress. We already have it, but it's good that it exists. A little bit of card advantage. That might see play in mono black. I don't know. There's part of the night cycle. This is a Bob. if they have more cards than you, and you get to draw more cards. That seems okay. It's kind of the opposite of the Bob design in Metropolis that I have, where only if you're ahead do you get to pay life and draw cards. Whereas this, if you're behind on cards. Although, if you're being very aggressive and you're emptying your hand, this is more likely to activate. And so this just becomes an aggro Bob, which I bet there's a blue-black infiltrate aggro cripple deck. This with the infiltrate lord, the bounce spell, and then the cripple cards, the cripple cantrip that you can cast for 0, things like that. I bet that becomes really strong. That might be interesting in Aristocrats. Probably doesn't see play. Might see play. Seal the Tomb. That's a constructed tool that I know some people are very high on. It's what's it called? It's a Phyrexian one that, except it costs black mana and you get to scry one. It's non-basic land hate. Like, it would hurt the fetches in Metropolis. This is something that would definitely see play in the Knights deck, which would be kind of exciting. I don't like his name is Sir Joffrey, when this has so many Game of Thrones analogs already. A betrayal at like a joining of clans, things like that. Nah, it's not that great. Although this works well with Cripple. I appreciate that the design exists in the set. I don't like that. Yeah, there's another controlling one. I mean, the base mode seems aggressive, but dealing 1 damage to all their creatures is a controlling thing. It's weird. This I could see play in mono black aggro as well, and kind of the same slot that I thought the other one would go in, where you just dare them to attack. You say, okay, I'll just destroy your attackers on my next turn. And there's another. It seems very strange the Cripple is so control bent, but it might be because there's a little bit of overlap with Infiltrate and Renown. And so Infiltrate and Renown obviously being aggressive mechanics, and so maybe making Cripple more control oriented, it allows the mechanics to feel a little more different, when I think all three generally want the same things naturally. Probably not see play. Seems a fine design. There seems to be a lot of ways for aggro to get cards, which I don't think is necessarily healthy. I forgot about Adorned. We haven't seen much Adorned. Maybe there's a lot of it in red. There was some in white, I believe. This is an interesting design, but I don't think it gets there. This is fun. I wonder if that would see play. Probably not. But I like this design a lot. Oh, it's a common. Holy cow. I thought at least uncommon. Lightning Strike would definitely see play. That's something Zoo really wants in the format. I don't think straight up Lightning Strike would be good. We have our red removal suite is ridiculous, and this would push it over the top, in my opinion. This is a fun card. I think it's too slow, but that'd be fun in not Highlander, but ECH. Yeah. And then here's the Shock. So we have both Shock and Lightning Strike here. I think that would be too much. If I were the designer of the set, I'd probably pick one or the other. But, I mean, none of them break a format on their own, obviously. Like, Wizards is fine having both in their format. But in addition to Calamit's Gaze and the other stuff we already have, I don't think it's good. This is more of that theme of both players drawing cards. It's kind of fun. It deals 1 damage to both you and to them. This feels very red. I like the design. This would be one of the designs I would look at keeping, and maybe look at shuffling the other slots into something else. I like it because it enables Cripple. And it's cheap. It just feels like a very red way to do extra cards. This is kind of neat. I could see after an aggro deck using this in main phase 2 to ramp up to their next turn's big threats. I'm a little surprised I haven't seen more fabled auras meant to push for boggles, because I feel like that'd be a natural thing to do, like an instant. Well, and we'll see when we get there. This seems kind of fine, but it feels a little more rare than Mythic in power level. But I don't know, I haven't played with it. It might be better than I think it is. This seems redundant with the other discard Mythic that I saw, where you discard your hand and you draw many cards. And then there was a blue self wheel as well. There might be too many wheels. I'd look at that. I think there must be a cycle of enchantments that have off-color activation costs. I like that design. This looks like it could be really strong, but I think it's probably appropriately costed, because on turn 2 it's a 0/2. And do you really want that from your red 1-drops? I don't know. So there's interesting tension there. More burn. Another thing I noticed is draw a card seems to be the bonus of choice for most hoops in the set. For good reason, drawing a card is fun. No one will dislike drawing a card. But something I noticed is it just seems to repeat itself a little too much. Naturalize plus draw a card. That seems fine. Oh, some more adorned. Very good. Draw a card on ETB. This would possibly see play in some grindier green decks. Draw a card when an enchantment comes into play. This would see play in boggles. I like this design. I think the Voltron aspect makes sense for the set, so I'm not against that. But so I would keep this design and look at maybe trimming down some of the other draw card designs. This card's busted. Declan, it's just dumb. I mean, as long as you curve out. This reminds me of that Eldrazi card that was just out of control during Eldrazi Winter. This card I would not want to see play. Like, it would have to be fixed or banned or something, because this, I imagine, would just feel very oppressive, and I wouldn't want to play against it. This might see play in Stompy, but the main stats aren't great. If it were a 3/2, I would play it for sure. That seems fine. Elk Tribal at Mythic. And draw that many cards, more drawing cards. I'd probably redesign this. I don't know. I could see it as being any creature. I would remove Elk Tribal, but I don't know. I don't know why elks are so big in many of these sets. This is an interesting build-around card. A nice Johnny card. I think it's a great design. I don't know if it would see playing Custard, but I'd think about it. Whoa, that's a lot of value for a common. Holy cow. Our knight. Hey, it fits hollows. So there's all the. I feel like Fabled is more for limited. Outside of that white one that seemed very constructed pushed for the Turbo Fog deck. Yeah, more drawing of cards. Ranger's Guile would see play in Boggles to help the non-hexproof enchantment creatures that like enchantments, but there's already Ranger's Guile in the format. I appreciate that it's in this format also. This might, I don't know, it's very toolboxy. It might be a little too clunky and slow. There's probably faster and better ways to do the same effect in the format. Alright, multicolored cards. This is an interesting design. I might do it in a mono red burn deck. with like Phoenix Flames and Calamit's Gaze to get more 4 damage effects for just 2 mana. Although, if this set were to rotate in, there'd already be so many great burn spells that this wouldn't make it. You know what I mean? Like, it would have Shock and Pillar of Flame and Lightning Strike, and then Calamit's Gaze and Phoenix Flames. And after that, there's not as much room for things like Absence of the Unmaker. This is an interesting sweeper. It's one of those like white situational sweepers where it's almost like a sweeper. In some situations, it would be perfect, but in most situations where you actually want to cast your sweeper, it's not good. Like if they have a Screecher and a bunch of weenies, this kills everything but the Screecher, and you're still taking 4 flying damage next turn, which is not worth 5 mana in my opinion. I could see this for 4 mana, maybe. Maybe it's more of a mid-range card. Like, you're against aggro, you play something big, on their next turn, you block one of their things, you still take a bunch of damage. On your next turn, you sweep all their stuff, but you still have your big blocker. So I probably misevaluated that. I could see this as a 2-1 if you wanted to push it for aggro. Seems just having a base 1-1 is not worth the effect, in my opinion. This is too strong. I wouldn't like it. Yeah, just flat indestructible on a 3-3 that then gets bigger, even if it's a legend. It's too much for me. I really like the design of Duke Hoff. It's interesting because it makes all your creatures good, but then it blocks and kills the creatures you attack with, which seems to fit perfectly into the flavor of the set, which I really appreciate. One thing about the set, there's no flavor bars. I would prefer that it just updated to the new mainframe template and just added flavor bars to everything. Just update things for the latest standards in Magic design, even if it's been done for a while. If it were to go into Custard, that's what I would prefer. Ellis, I would love to have as a general in ECH. This is a really cool design, in my opinion, because 1-drops are so naturally bad to ask players, well, what if you had ways to play them for free from your deck all the time? Well, okay, well then what do you do? What kind of 1-drops do you run? Are there 1-drops that have additional costs to cast that make them very powerful, but you know that you could cheat with this way, with that card? I would love to try that. I don't think that sees play in Constructed. This, if this were an aura, I could see it in Boggles, but the fact it's not an aura, I'm not as certain. This is a fun design, but it's probably not good enough for Custard. This is a mill design, probably more for ECH. I obviously like mill and Custard. I don't think this gets there by itself. This, I really hate this design. It doesn't feel mythic. It just feels annoying to play against. And if you mix that with White's Turbo Fog, I think that would just be really frustrating to play against. I really like this design. I like the modularity of it. Maybe Control decks would just play this like they do in Revitalize with Dominaria and just gain 3 life and draw a card, but I love that it could also be in something aggressive, like give your creature indestructible and draw a card. It might be too strong, but there's stronger cards in Custard right now. This reminds me of Thoughtstorm from the first formats in Custard. It only deals 1 damage instead of 2, but they get to draw a card each time they do it. This can't be healthy, right? Like, there's no way that this can be healthy for the format. I suspect it's been people who have built around this card before, made other decks. I'm curious what they think about it, but I'm terrified of this card being in Custard. This and Declan and Declare Mother Bear. Those are 3 cards that I would, they would have to be evaluated and tweaked before I feel comfortable with them in Custard, in my opinion. This is interesting. This is like uh, Blood. Gosh, what was it called? Coach Thief? Bloodshot Coach Thief? Is that what it was called? From Laredo? It's not exactly like that, but basically, you reveal a card. Do you want to pay this much life for me to not draw it? Otherwise, you get it. You don't get to pick how much life, it's just going to be the CMC of the card. Uh, oh, it's like Sin Prodder. Yeah, it was just Sin Prodder, the enchantment. I like that. I liked how Sin Prodder played. This might be weaker than Sin Prodder because it's not also on a creature, but it's also less removable. I think that's a fine design. It might be interesting in a blue-red tempo deck. This is interesting in several ways. Like getting a big body for 3 mana is an interesting hoop, and then the bonus is interesting in that it's not necessarily strict upside in a very black-red way. Like you might end up hurting yourself in a Tybalt way, except you're still getting card advantage from it, so it doesn't feel as bad as Tybalt. And you've already got this undercosted 4/4 when you play it, which helps the potential feel bads get balanced out. I just kind of feel chaotic. And I think the way the story is, having that kind of a chaos design with Lady Genevieve is awesome. So, great design. This is my favorite cripple design. Um, this would see play in Boggles for sure. Well, maybe. It'd be redundant with some of the auras that are already there. But it's the kind of card that would see play. I find it interesting that the cards that would see play in Boggles aren't the Fabled cards, but other enchantments and enchantment matter cards. And this is my wife. Almost done. Sorry. This might give some protection to the Boggles deck. If they manage to kill your creatures, you can then go find. Well, I guess you could just find an enchantment or a fabled card. It wouldn't help you find a body, which is usually what you want when you lose your Boggle, is to find another Boggle. This is a weird card. This is an interesting creature. I think it sees play in red-green aggro. Being able to pump it is pretty big. Sometimes there's a downside in it, which is why I like the card. It has some tension there. This is interesting. If it were to see play, I wouldn't hate it, because it's very removable. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't see play, but it is pushed enough that it's worth thinking about and testing. This I don't know that I like, punishing opponents for having big creatures. Maybe this sees play in red-white aggro, white aggro. Yeah, I could see that with the zombie Hellhound, Rotting Hellhound, and some of the other go white cards that exist. I could see that in there. Kind of an each player theme. Another each player theme. Each player drawing a card. There's a lot of those designs, and I wish there were fewer. This is an aristocrat that doesn't seem very good. Like, this could easily be an uncommon and still not be as good as some of the aristocrats cards that already exist in the format. Mill Cripple is so... that tension is just so... too much. Yeah, it's just strange that Cripple doesn't seem to be on any aggressive cards. Except, of course, for Genevieve. This would probably be a Boggles card. It gives hexproof to the player so they can't cast edicts against you. And then as soon as you get an enchantment on it, it is a boggle. So you'd have to wait for a window to play it, and I'm glad that it has that kind of a shields down moment. But the opponent doesn't know it's a shields down moment until you've already played her, which might, maybe that's not enough interaction for a card like this, but I appreciate it as being a card that I would try and see play. I would try and help it to see play. Yeah, this is another thing which involves both players drawing cards. This seems okay to me in a set where you're building creatures up into towers to have a rare equipment where you can give things hexproof. I don't think it would see play in Custard, but I appreciate the design existing. This I really dislike. This seems obnoxiously pushed. It ramps you for 2 mana, and it only costs 2. Like, even just to tap add C has a lot of Custard ramifications. And then helping it to ramp even more and fix as well, I think is too good. I think this would, well, depends how strong you want the format to be and how important it is to have that good ramp in every color. But this is a card that would have to be talked about, in my opinion. More drawing of cards. It didn't seem like there was that much renown, but I did skim over things I thought weren't constructed playable, so I may just not have noticed it. I like this land cycle. I think it would fit well in Custard right now. It's the one from BFZ. Whiterun gates. I generally dislike lands that have big splashy abilities no matter what cost you put there, because there's just no opportunity cost to run them. There's very little opportunity cost. And then each player may draw a card again. So too much. Okay, that was A Tourney at Whiterun. Something I was thinking about is how all the mechanics work together really well. Infiltrate and Cripple work well together. Fabled and Adorned work well together. Renowned, I think, is redundant with Infiltrate. Since Infiltrate is the new mechanic, I'd prefer to keep that one. When I first read Infiltrate, I thought, man, that is just so complicated. But I think in play, I suspect it plays much more smoothly. Renowned, I would think, is a little redundant. I think Hersey Corsi has said that this set is finished and isn't likely to see many more changes, which is fine. I think there's a lot of interesting designs in it. A lot of cards would be fun to play. I highlighted themes that I think would play well with Custard. I also highlighted some, design choices that I think, might improve the set. But it was fun to see a lot of these designs and to go through the set. And hopefully this helps other people when they're ranking their sets for the Custard vote coming up in a week or so. But thanks to Hersey Corsi for submitting the set. It was fun to look at, and thank you all for listening to this video. And to my wife for showing up halfway through. Yeah, thanks. Bye.